The next article I wanted to look at is titled Robert Jeffress, Criticizing Oral Roberts University for Being Anti-Gay is Intolerant, quote unquote. This is by Hemant Mehta on the Friendly Atheist website, so let's give it a read and see what it says. A few days ago, Hamal Havari, I feel like I pronounced that wrong, I apologize if so, wrote a perfectly reasonable story for USA Today about how Oral Roberts University's basketball success comes with some added baggage. By numbers alone, the number 15 seeded ORU team, Oral Roberts University team, should have lost its first game. Instead, it won both games last weekend, making it to the Sweet 16. In a competition that is built on Cinderella stories, Oral Roberts University is arguably the most unlikely team to make it this far into the tournament this year. Their next game is Saturday night against number 3, Arkansas. But Haveri rightly points out that the school will likely use this tournament to boost its reputation, even though it doesn't deserve that because the school bans any students in same-sex relationships, and the NCAA is allowing it to happen. That's kind of messed up. Here's a quote. As a private university and under the banner of fundamentalist Christian beliefs, the school is free to impose whatever standards of behavior they see fit, even if those standards are wildly out of line with modern society and the basic values of human decency. Now, as Oral Roberts gains national attention, the focus shouldn't just be on their very good men's basketball team, but on their prejudiced teachings and moral regressiveness. Now, Oral Roberts is primed to reap the rewards of the work from their unpaid student athletes. On the backs of those hard-working kids, the university will seek to rewrite the narrative of their school into one of athletic victory, when in fact it's steeped in bigotry and exclusionary fundamentalism. The NCAA gave Oral Roberts that opportunity by allowing them into the tournament. Fans and media, eager to embrace a Cinderella story, helped push that narrative along, either without knowing all the facts or willingly burying them as irrelevant. Fascinating. So I guess this is part of the article from USA Today. And I think I can agree with that. I think I can agree with all of it. You know, the NCAA is helping Oral Roberts basically rebuild their bad reputation. A reputation that's rightly bad for being just very bigoted, disgusting, for holding bigoted, disgusting views, pretty much. This is Hemant Mehta speaking. There are two separate issues here. How ORU, or Oral Roberts University, will use its basketball success to redefine the school, and whether the NCAA should even allow schools like it in the tournament. There are obvious legal issues with the latter. Should any private school that's anti-abortion or anti-LGBT be allowed in the tournament? What's the line? But the fact remains that ORU's anti-LGBTQ policies contradict the NCAA's own stated values. The same could be said about Abilene Christian University, whose team is still in the tournament, and Liberty University, whose team is not. There are also multiple Catholic schools left in the tournament, whose overall beliefs likely contradict the NCAA's goals as well. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I absolutely 100% agree that if their policies contradict or go against the NCAA's own stated values, they shouldn't be allowed in the tournament. I don't see why this is such a controversial take. If they want to be a part of, this organization, the NCAA, they have to follow the rules just like everybody else does. Now, bear in mind that those may not be official rules by the NCAA. They're just stated values. And I think those stated values should be respected, personally. This is Hemant Mehta again. It's also true that many of these athletes don't necessarily give a damn about the school's policies. They may sign a faith statement as part of going there, but they just want to play, and if that means going to ORU or Liberty U or any other Division I school, so be it. It'd be unfair to punish the students for the bigotry of the schools they represent. I disagree, and let me tell you why I disagree with that. People have talked about, my situation with the teacher and everything. I'm sure most people probably know about my situation with the teacher. Just give you a quick explanation of it. One of Kylie's public school teachers started talking about God and talking shit about atheists, saying they're evil and blah, 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 blah. She got it on recording. We turned it into the Board of Education, and the teacher purportedly got in trouble for what she said, because that is illegal, and they could be sued for that, right? Well, a lot of people are saying that it's the students who have to pay for that lawsuit, so we shouldn't do it at all. But ultimately, in my opinion, yeah, I understand that the money that goes toward paying the lawsuits, fines, and legal fees and everything, I understand that money comes out of teaching the classes and things like that. I get that. But we have to be careful not to victim blame here. Whose fault is it that the school district has to pay a fine? It's not only the teacher's fault for breaking the law, but it's the school board's fault for not doing anything about it. They have the option of doing something about it, stopping the teacher, firing her, something. And they choose not to. And that is the moment at which the money that comes out of their pockets, the money that comes from the students, it's on their heads. It's the school board's fault. The onus is on them. So, yeah, I understand a lawsuit will cost ultimately the students, but whose fault is it that they broke the law? It's the teacher's fault and the school board's fault. If they didn't want the money coming out of the students' pockets, the students' hands or mouths, they shouldn't have broken the law, or they should have been careful to remedy the situation when the time came, and they didn't. So, Hemant Mehta has an interesting point here. He says, it'd be unfair to punish the students for the bigotry of the schools they represent. You are punishing the schools, and it's the school's fault. Don't let the onus get flipped. It's the school's fault here. Now, if the students are suffering, it's a reason for the school to change. The onus is on the school. It's not on us to accommodate the school. It's not on the NCAA to let them in anyways because they're just students trying to play basketball or football or any other sport. It's not like that. It's the school's fault, and they need to fix the problem if they don't want their students to suffer the consequences. That's my take on it. Anyways, back to what Hemant Mehta was saying. Anyway, last night, Pastor Robert Jeffress was asked to speak about the USA Today article on Fox News, and naturally, he turned this into a diatribe about cancel culture. Of course, that's the extreme hard-right evangelicals' go-to phrase right now is cancel culture. Everything is cancel culture. I find it interesting that he was on Fox News, though, because his go-to Fox News show was Lou Dobbs. And, of course, Lou Dobbs was canceled by Fox News for some shady shit. I don't remember what it was now. But here is Robert Jeffress on Fox News again. A different show this time, I guess, on Fox News. So let's see what this fella had to say for himself.
Pastor of First Baptist Church in Dallas, Fox News contributor Dr. Robert Jeffress. Good to have you back, sir.
Thank you, Shannon.
Want to read a little bit more of that piece. They go on to
Look at the shit-eating grin on his face. Gotta love it.
Say on the backs of the hardworking kids, because they don't want to insult the kids that are playing in the tournament. They say the university will seek to rewrite the narrative of their school into one of athletic victory when in fact it's steeped in bigotry and an exclusionary fundamentalism. These folks.
Yeah, remember, this is a quote from the article on USA Today, I believe it was, by Hamal Havari, or Hamal Haveri. I apologize if I'm getting that name wrong. I'm doing my best.
The school shouldn't even be part of the tournament because it doesn't line up with NCAA values.
Well, look, I mean, this is March Madness that we're witnessing with all of this. And, you know, when you think about it, for the so-called inclusion editor of USA Today to call for the exclusion of a basketball team or a school because of their religious beliefs, I mean, that's the height of hypocrisy. And it proves the adage that many times those who cry loudest for tolerance are the most intolerant people when it comes to ideas they disagree with.
Interesting point. Okay, so what this guy is talking about here is something called the paradox of intolerance. I believe that's what it's called. It's the idea that if you want to live in a tolerant society, then you have to be intolerant of people who are intolerant. You can't tolerate intolerance. So let me put it this way. If you want to be in a society that is tolerant of LGBT rights, of atheist rights, equality across the board, doesn't have a racist bone in its body. If you want to live in a society where people are tolerant of each other and love each other and are inclusionary, then you can't put up with people who are racist, who hate LGBT people. You can't put up with that kind of thing. By definition, if you're in a tolerant society, you won't include intolerant people in it. That's the paradox of intolerance. And generally speaking, for the most part, I believe that we should be able to say anything, pretty much, within reason, within the bounds of what is legally acceptable. Obviously, there's a line for everybody, including the U.S. government. There is a line of acceptable speech and unacceptable speech with the U.S. government. So I guess you could say I fall on that line. I don't want anybody going to jail for what they say, for the most part. But when it comes to things like including people in football games or basketball games or whatever, like we're seeing here, I have no issue with the NCAA being selective about who they allow in. I'm okay with them not including intolerant people. If we want to live in a society of inclusion, there have to be guardrails. By definition, you have to not let in intolerant people if you're in a tolerant society. So that's the paradox of tolerance. Anyway, let's keep watching this clip.
Allowed us for tolerance are the most intolerant people when it comes to ideas they disagree with.
Only ideas of intolerance. That's the whole bit here. We don't tolerate intolerance, and that's what this is.
Look, Shannon, people may not agree with ORU's belief that marriage should be between a man and a woman, but that's hardly an extreme or fanatical belief. For 3,000 years, that's been the teaching of Judaism. For 2,000 years, the teaching of Christianity. And
okay, so it's been the teaching of Judaism and Christianity for all this time. What if it's wrong? Do you ever consider the idea that maybe it's wrong? Up until 50 years ago, black people weren't allowed to drink from the same water fountains as white people in the U.S. There is a long history, 200, 300 years, of them drinking from different water fountains. Is that an argument to keep it the same? Is that a reason to prevent integration? Is that a reason to keep segregation in place because it's been here this entire time? No, that's absolutely fucking ridiculous. And the fact that he's arguing this is an embarrassment to our society in the U.S.
You allow this kind of cancel culture to exist.
Oh, here we fucking go again, cancel culture. That's all they talk about right now. This is not cancel culture. I actually intended to do a video on Dr. Seuss and the whole Dr. Seuss debacle where they claimed that it was cancel culture striking again when it absolutely wasn't. It was just a publisher choosing to not publish their own fucking books anymore. But I don't even know. I don't even know where to go with this story. Like, I'm so sick of hearing this cancel culture bullshit.
And if you allow this kind of cancel culture to exist, where do you stop it? I mean, what about Catholic universities like Notre Dame or Gonzaga that are part of the Catholic Church that opposes abortion or women's reproductive rights, as it's called?
Well, I would say the line is where the NCAA put their statement of values, right? Isn't that the line that was being drawn in the USA Today article? They said this organization doesn't line up with the NCAA's stated values, and that's why they shouldn't be included. That's where the line is. But this guy is talking to the extreme right. He's talking to far right Christians right now, and they're just eating it up listening to him.
That are part of the Catholic Church that opposes or women's reproductive rights, as it's called. Should they be excluded as well? I think it's time for this irrational intolerance of people of faith by the left, especially people of the conservative Christian faith. It's time for that to end.
No, it's not about that. We're not intolerant of Christians or, conservatives or any of that. We are intolerant of intolerance. I don't want racist bullshit in my life. I don't want misogynistic bullshit in my life. The NCAA doesn't need misogynistic, racist bullshit in their ranks. That is the paradox of intolerance. They are separating themselves from intolerance in an effort to make the country more tolerant.
Intolerance of people of faith by the left, especially people of the conservative Christian faith, it's time for that to end, and it needs to end now.
Well, you know, there's a piece in rebuttal in the USA Today talking about from Chick-fil-A to the Salvation Army to this baker in Colorado, Jack Phillips, who, by the way, is going to be on with us tomorrow. We have to decide whether we want to run everyone out of everywhere they dare to go with their biblically based ideas. Maybe we could just let the religious college kids play basketball without becoming a national controversy. That is what tolerance used to mean.
No, they're not biblical values. They are this weird little fucking subset of extremists' values. I know a ton of Christians who don't believe in intolerance. I know a ton of inclusionary, loving Christians. It's not about that. It's about people being intolerant and hateful and bigoted. That's what it is. Nobody needs to be tolerant of that bullshit.
National controversy. That is what tolerance used to mean. I mean, do you think there's space for people to disagree about these are hot button issues, that they don't have to endorse each other's view of the issue? Can we find that space?
Well, I hope we can. But again, I mean, it is not right to try to force beliefs on people. ORU's not trying to.
How about that? Not right to force beliefs on people. Isn't that ironic? Coming from Mr. Robert Jeffress himself. This dude is the king. Oh, shit. Bought my mic. This dude is the king of forcing his beliefs on people. That is what he is all about. That's what he's always been about. That's part of his fucking Christian beliefs. Cram Jesus down people's throats until they can't breathe. I can't believe I'm hearing this out of this guy's mouth.
Their beliefs on anyone. The fact is those students are there because they volunteered to be there. And I think there's a lot of confusion, Shannon, because people say, well, the Supreme Court has legalized gay marriage. It's legalized abortion. The Supreme Court has the authority to decide what's constitutional, but it has absolute...
Yeah, exactly. What's legal? That's what they did. The Supreme Court said that it is legal for gay marriage and for to take place in the U.S. That's what the Supreme Court decided, that it's not against the Constitution. And for all intents and purposes, that means we're perfectly free to get gay married or have abortions because the Supreme Court made that decision.
No moral authority to decide what is right or wrong.
Nobody said they had the moral authority to decide what was right or wrong. They said that the Supreme Court decided that it's perfectly legal and constitutional to do those things. Why is he suddenly flipping it around and trying to take a different angle with this? No one said anything about morality.
It has the authority to decide what's constitutional, but it has absolutely no moral authority to decide what is right or wrong, and neither does the NCAA or neither does USA Today.
Yeah, but USA Today and NCAA do have the right to decide what's morally right or wrong for their company. They can decide for their people and their organizations what they think is right because it's a private company. They can do what they fucking want, right? This guy is in favor of private companies up until the moment that he's not. He is all about giant corporations and tax cuts and liberty and freedom and all of that other shit until it starts interfering with what he wants. And when that time comes, he's suddenly completely against those things.
NCAA or neither does USA Today. That's something for the purview of faith.
Okay, we're just about out of time. So I just want to say a thank you to you and your team.
Okay, wait a minute. Now that was fascinating. So he said the NCAA doesn't have the right to decide things on moral grounds. That's a matter for faith. So he's saying that religion is the only thing that can decide moral values. And his religion has decided, look at his eyes here. He looks so angry. And his religion has decided that gay marriage is evil. So everybody in the U.S., maybe even the world, needs to fall in line with that because he is the moral authority. Isn't that interesting?
USA Today. That's something for the purview of faith.
Okay, we're just about out of time. So I just want to say a thank you to you and your team there at First Baptist Dallas. Huge contributions to my new book that is coming out next week, The Women of the Bible.
Nope, not going to get a shout out on my channel. Fascinating stuff, man. This guy is something else. Anyway, let's read a quote from the video we just watched. Those who cry loudest for tolerance are the most intolerant people when it comes to ideas they disagree with. I think it's time for this irrational intolerance of people of faith by the left, especially people of the conservative Christian faith. It's time for that to end, and it needs to end now. This is Hemant Mehta speaking. Jeffress, as usual, missed the point. This isn't about disagreement. This isn't about banning an athlete for holding an unpopular view. It's a question of whether the NCAA should welcome schools that violate their own mission. But Jeffress only sees Christian persecution. Even obvious hypocrisy has to go through that lens. So questioning ORU's anti-gay stance is somehow an attack on all Christians everywhere. This is pretty standard for Robert Jeffress. He has a way of making it all about himself. And I'm honestly impressed by his ability to completely ignore anything except for Christian persecution.